What's up, everyone? What is happening? Welcome. Sorry I'm a couple minutes late here. I was just finishing eating, actually. You guys can see me and hear me okay? So, I thought since last time, some people were talking about they wanted me to that I didn't cover something that someone asked. I thought I'd ask you guys what you want me to talk about, and then make sure I cover the things that you want me to cover on here. So you can start with any questions. Michael, I know you should use monitors for mastering, but are there any headphones I recommend to get 90% of the way there? The headphones I like are Sennheiser 280 HDs. I don't know why. I bought them. They're comfortable. I've used them for years and years, and I just like the sound of them. They're just, I think they're really great sounding headphones. I mean, there's obviously better sounding headphones and everything, but it really kind of comes down to whatever you're used to. Matter of fact, my regular monitors are Event PS6s. I have NS10s as well, but I've gotten used to these speakers. I've been using them since 1999, and I'm used to the sound of them. I like the sound of them. They're comfortable to listen on. I know what things sound like on them. Ultimately, that's all you have to be able to do, is you have to be able to know what you're hearing. As long as you can do that. Some people like monitors that I think sound really weird. Genelecs. There's certain types of Genelecs that I think are bizarre sounding that people like. You know, I used to think NS10 sounded bad, and then I got used to them. So, honestly, anything that you're used to listening on, I think works. That's my question on that. That's my answer on that, I should say. Biodynamic used 250 ohm as opposed to 80 ohm. One of the things, I brought this up the other day, though, is that a lot of people have a lot of trouble with mixing. And mixing is about monitoring and reference. If you go it depends on what kind of music you're listening to. Certain types of music you have to listen to loud, at least to get certain sounds, to make sure your mix holds together at a loud volume. There are certain mixers that mix at incredibly quiet volumes. There's Andy Wallace. He's pretty much retired now, but he mixed at very low volumes. But he would always start his mix at the loudest point, so he could set his mix bus compression. And then he'd go from there, and once he gets it set for the tune, he knows it's not going to get any louder than that. So it might be, let's say it's halfway through the bridge or something. He goes to the loudest dynamics of the tune, sets the bus compression level there, and then he's pretty much set for it. Gets all the tracks up in there, which is a smart way to do it. I would use typically 3 different monitor setups when I'm mixing, and I've mixed 1,000 projects. That's projects. I'm talking with multiple 10-song records, 5-song records, EPs. Probably 1,000 altogether, something like that, over the last 25 years. I mean, an insane amount. And I used to enjoy mixing, and then I found it to be incredibly tedious after a while. But to make a living in the music business, that is one of the skills that you need to have, and it really goes for any kind of music. You can be a jazz musician, a classical musician, not a classical musician, but like a film scorer, things like that. You have to have the ability to be a mixer. It's really important. If you own a DAW, you need to mix your stuff, and the better you are at it, the more opportunities you have to make a living. So that was a skill that I developed when I was in my early 40s. First 2 years that I produced, I had a guy that was an engineer that worked with me. His name was Billy Hume. And Billy engineered and mixed everything I did. And then Billy went off on his own, and I started having to mix all my own projects. And it was a pretty steep learning curve. They don't teach you about gain structure. Billy knew about gain structure, but he was doing hybrid mixing when we first started because this was in the transition from tape to Pro Tools. So we would record vocals in Pro Tools and record the instruments on tape, and we would sync it. So we would play back. It was a pain too, because we were psyched that we could do the vocals in Pro Tools because we had a lot of freedom with the as far as the editing is concerned, because it's hard to bounce. It was hard to do vocal takes, to bounce vocal comping on a tape machine. And then we went all into Pro Tools, but you had to learn things like gain structure, and gain structure is incredibly important to mixing. Another thing where it's good to go to the loudest part of the song and get your gain structure together there. Tom, very stupid learning. We always had great mixers to mix your stuff. Now you're trying to learn on my own and you hate it. I know. It's incredibly stressful. You'll do a mix and then you'll think it sounds good. And then you listen to it the next day and you say, what was I thinking? Honestly, I would be afraid to listen to my mixes because they would never end. The more I'd listen to them, the more I just couldn't help myself but change things. It's kind of like when I'm making videos here for YouTube. If I spent all the time to get every fade, the last video I did on the guitar players, the guitar gods, there were some things where I wanted to fade to black, or I couldn't figure out some of the transitions, and I didn't think it was important for the flow of the video, but I feel like it would have been important for the aesthetic of the video, but not for getting the point across. So I did it sometimes, but I didn't do it all the time, and that's kind of. And that's a thing to if you want to be successful at mixing, you got to really have that attention to detail. Frank asked, do people mix for being played over the radio as opposed to being at a home hi-fi? Nowadays, people, you really need to mix for both. Your mixes should be able to go on the radio. So ultimately, that's kind of the goal. They should be good enough to be played anywhere. I'm working on a video now about phase. And I have a subwoofer in my control room here. And the thing about subwoofers is that they will save you a lot of hassle if you have a sub. How many people have subwoofers with their systems that they're working on right now? I want to see. Subwoofers are allow you to hear things that you cannot hear at all. Tom, can you isolate your subwoofer and just hear the things that are coming out of it? Or Chris? It's important to be able to solo the subwoofer so you can hear the material, because condo life, forcing you to use headphones, yeah. There's a lot of referencing that you can do where you just reference the low end. And no matter what the genre of music is, if you're doing movie trailers and you need to get that big low end and you have a reference piece that you're using, there's a great plugin for Pro Tools called Magic AB. And Magic AB is a plugin that goes on your mix bus. And it's the last thing on your mix bus. And you can load in, I think, 9 reference songs to it. And you can A-B your mix with these 9 reference songs. And you can take the reference song. Has anybody ever heard of this plugin? It's a really great plugin. You can loop a section of the song, let's say the chorus, of one of your reference songs. And it'll save the in and out points. So you can just, when you hit it to A-B, it'll immediately switch over to that. It won't have any of your mix bus compression. You put the last thing in the chain on the master bus. And then you can go and you can... So sometimes, let's say I'm working on something and I want to make sure it has massive low end if I'm doing a movie trailer or something like that. I'll listen to a movie trailer that I know has massive low end. And I'll just listen to the subwoofer and I'll see if mine matches. I'll see if there's any... if I need to high pass it, because sometimes you need to do that. But Magic AB is a great plugin. So I would have, I would load up my samples. I always would put songs that are similar to the one, or pieces that were similar to one I was in, to make sure. And it can really save you a lot of time. And you can do really quick A-Bing, and you can reference the snare level, or you can reference the kick level, or you can reference the, what the violins sound like. Or if you have, the right room sounds on. Tom, you write a lot of MIDI orchestra with heavy low end. You're slowly getting better at writing arrangements with tons of bottom end. Those are the things I'm talking about. Those are the things that unless you have the right system, you can't hear those things. I worked with Chad Blake, who is a great mixer. He mixed Black Keys, and he mixed Los Lobos record. He trying to think of what record he mixed. He's just a phenomenal mixer. He used to work with Peter Gabriel, and he mixed the record for me. And I said, Chad, what speakers do you what speakers do you use for mixing? Because your low end is massive. How are you getting away with that? He told me he had $15,000 monitors, high-end stereo monitors that he used, that would go down to 40 hertz at, I don't know, 60 dB or something. Quiet. So he could mix really quietly, and he could still hear the bottom end. And I'm not sure what they were, Chris. They were made in Scotland, I think, or Wales. I'm not sure. I can't remember the company. I have it written down somewhere, but they were really expensive monitors. And there's a picture of him mixing, and you can see where they are. And his mixes were unbelievably accurate on the bottom end. He could get away with so much bottom end. If you listen to that Brother record by the Black Keys, I think it's called Brother, the low end is just enormous. ATC are from the UK. That might be it, actually, Chris. That could be it. But he could get a massively big kick and massively big bass, and they would not fight with each other. And is there software that can create a click track by analyzing audio? There is software that will do beat mapping, tempo mapping based on the transients. But another way that I've done it is I'll put up a microphone, put on headphones, I'll play a piece, and I'll just click my sticks together and create a live click track playing along with it. That seems to work incredibly well. And I've done that in many projects. It's very natural. It's way faster than programming a click and using some type of tempo mapping like that if you don't have a click when you're doing it. So yeah, so that's that's the thing with mixing is you want to have a source that has really accurate low end, and then you want to have something. I will mix on really small clock radio speakers, and I never get my snare level wrong. I never get my vocal level wrong if I'm mixing a rock tune or something or pop tune. I can always hear the bass if I do it on that because I'll add some 300 hertz because that's really as low as they go. If you listen if you're listening to music on your iPhone, that's as low as it goes. And if you want to hear the bass and not have it sound like it's completely gone, you got to have some 300 in there. And I knew that because I would start sweeping the bass guitar and I'd see where it came out. And you start, oh, whoa, I hear that. That's 300 hertz. Whoa, that's weird. I can actually hear that. And you hear it on the laptop speaker. So I'd set up GarageBand on my old computer. I'd plug in through the input and I'd have the speakers on and I'd be listening from, let's say, 8 feet away. And by that time it's in mono, right? So you could really tell the vocal level, the snare level. You could tell if you heard the bass or not. You could hear all those things. How does YouTube compression affect the mix? It affects it. It affects it. It's kind of hard to say because I swear that different people, depending on how many subscribers they are, have different quality upload. That the quality of their uploads is different. If you ever watch things on Netflix, for example, like let's say House of Cards or something like that, any Netflix show that they shoot in 4K, 8K, 6K, 8K, they look way better than any of the other shows. Well, that's because they're devoting a lot more bandwidth to their things, and they just look incredible. But I've got a friend that works for Showtime. He runs the editing department, and he said that they spend, they have multiple people that will do data compression on shows for Showtime. They'll go through every few seconds of a video and use different data compression schemes. And he told me things like, if there's a repeating background, for example, if I was here playing and I had a black background behind me, well, it looked like my head was floating. But because the background is not changing, when you're doing this data compression, it doesn't redraw the background basically, okay? And he said the things that would make the files much smaller, so that you didn't have these massive master files. But he said if you're doing a scene with rain is, there's nothing you can do about it, because all the individual droplets coming down, you get huge files. So they would always, he said they go minute by minute on movies, and would use different, types of compression on it. Harry asks, what's my favorite mix bus chain in the box and analog? A lot of times it depends. I used to put 2 compressors on my master bus. One of them would be a multiband compressor that I would shape the EQ of the mix. And then I'd have another compressor with maybe a limiter on it that I would just touch a little bit, just to tighten it up a little bit more. As far as what they might be, it depends. Sometimes I would use McDSP MC2000 bus compressor. It's multi-band. It's a 4-band multi-band compressor. And I might follow that up with some type of a limiter sometimes. But I would tend to EQ my mix, or I would set different ratios, different knees, and different attack and release times for different areas of the mix: the low end, the low mids, the high mids, and the high end. I would use a lot of mixed bus compressors in lieu of EQ as well, because they act kind of like a de-esser. And so I would do this if I had a guitar that was woofy, for example. I had a preset that would go in, and all it would do is take the low mids and duck them down. I put this thing on it, and it just would make the guitar clean right up or something. Or I'd have a thing called a de-harsher. De-harsher would be something that would go in and take out, 3.8K or whatever, and do that using a multi-band compressor. Essentially, you're using de-essing like that, but this works a little bit differently. So, another mixed bus chain I like is I like the Glue as a mixed bus compressor. I like a lot of the stuff from Universal Audio. I like their SSL 4K mixed bus compressor. I think that's very good. I like the 33609 that they make, which is a Neve compressor limiter, which is really great. It depends on what your budget is. If you have a chance to have an analog bus chain, that's a different kind of thing, and that kind of depends on what you're going for. You might want a Abbey Road EMI limiter, or which the TG, TG2 Chandler? No, TG1 bus limiter. That's Abbey Road one that's just incredible sounding. It's really good on a drum bus, on drum rooms. It sounds unbelievable. It depends on what you have access to, though. But I like the SSL, the G series compressor, bus compressor. That's my favorite. And a lot of times I'll put an EQ after it too, and I will EQ the mix. I'll put it sometimes before it, sometimes after it. But sometimes you want to get it's just, it's hard to generalize, because it all depends on what kind of music you're doing. Frank, how do you get the whole tone scale to sound good when improvising? It sounds artificial. Well, the whole tone scale can start to sound that. Let's see. It's going to sound like that. I think that it's I think that I did a pattern of 7 there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I don't even know what pattern it is. 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm not even sure how many note pattern it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think it's a 9-note pattern. But those kind of things are cool. It can sound really artificial. I think it can sound really old. I think it has kind of an old sound to it. You hear a lot of older players using the whole tone scale, and even in composition, when you're trying to get a dream state or something, the whole tone scale can sound really dated. Warren teaches a lot of mixing. We should have a sounding off. I already had Warren on a sounding off. Let's see here. In one of my videos, I talked about the 3.8 whistle in Pro Tools, mostly with stock EQ plugins. Please elaborate. The 3.8K whistle, usually we get it when using Auto-Tune. If you're using an Audio Suite plugin, you used to find it a lot in early versions of Auto-Tune, where you get this artifact that would have a whistle to it. And when you'd EQ it out by using a notch filter, you'd realize, oh my God, that's weird. I played for people and they just couldn't hear it. I put this thing on, I do a minus 24 dB cut with the narrowest Q you can do. The channel strip plugin by Metric Halo is the best one for that, I think. And it's when you click it on and off, people would be blown away by how when the whistle is gone, they say, "What? I never heard that before." And it would be this weird out-of-tune artifact that would be in there. That was very, very fatiguing to the ear. I mean, unbelievably fatiguing. And I definitely, certain singers would have it really badly. I worked with a singer for Need to Breathe, and his nickname was The Knife because his singing would be so harsh. The mids in 3 and 4K area, it would be so harsh that it would be painful to listen to. And oh God, I mean, I'm thinking about it. I'm getting a headache doing it. The only way that we could figure out, and I talked to Chad Blake about this, what he would do, and one of the suggestions that he had was to put 2 mics next to each other, which I did. I mean, it wasn't something new to me. So we'd track a vocal, and we'd have a condenser mic here, and we'd have like an SM7 or a 57 right next to it. And he'd sing into one, and then any of those things when he would be doing E syllables, okay, E vowel, you'd have to go like this because it would be like an ice pick in the brain. And I would switch it over to the other mic. And that other mic, the 57, if he's singing into, let's say, U87 or something, I can't remember what we used, but, and you go off axis, if you go off axis, you don't have that piercing sound like that. So halfway through the syllables, I would switch to a completely different mic, which is weird. You think, well, how do you switch to a dynamic mic from a condenser mic? Well, it worked. It was either that, or you have to go in and spot EQ every single section that happens like that. And once you've done that, you're adding all this kind of, you're not adding phase distortion because you're actually doing, you're actually removing frequencies, right? You're doing subtractive EQ. So it sounded better. I thought using the 57 sounded really good. It was a cool thing. And it's a pain to spot EQ stuff, but you got to do it. If you have to do it, you got to do it. His vocals, there'd be records where I have to spot EQ every E syllable, every E sound in it, vowel. Because you go E and be so tight, and on a high note, it would be so piercing. And you go in and you would take it out. If I showed the EQ, let me see if I can find this. I talked about this the other day. Tom Elmhurst, who did Hold on. The EQ. Let me see if I can find this. I talked about this the other day. Tom Elmhurst, who did hold on. Tom the EQ. Elmhurst, let me see if I can find this. I talked about this the other day. Let me show you this here. This is fascinating, Elmhurst, I think. Who did hold on. This is the EQ. Let me see if I can find this. I talked about this the other day. Okay, here we go. Let me show you this here. This is fascinating, I think. Who did hold on. This is the EQ. Let me see if I can find this. I talked about this the other day. Okay, this is. Let me show you this here. This is fascinating. The EQ setting right here. Okay, hold on. This is the EQ. Let me see if you look here. Can you guys see this? Okay, this is. Let me show you this here. Minus 18 dB, 930 hertz. Right. Very. If you look here, can you guys see this? It's a notch filter. This is right here. Then minus 18 dB, 930. 1600. Very. Look, once again, minus 18 notch filter. Then it's 3.1K, then minus 12, right there. 1600 and high pass. Very low. Right, so everything below notch filter. Then it's 3.1K, minus 12, right there. 1600 and high pass. Very low. Right, so everything below notch filter. Because it's 3.1K, minus 12, right there. 1600 and high pass. I find that everything below notch because the voice was 1K minus 12 right there. 1600 and high pass. I find that everything below notch because the voice was 1K minus 12 right there. 1600 and high pass. I find that everything below notch because the voice was 1K minus 12 right there. 1600 and high pass. I find that everything below notch because the voice was 1K minus 12. Hold on. And high pass. I find everything below notch. Oh, I know what's going on. I know what was going on. It stopped, right? It's off now. It was a loop of talking. Right? Okay, did you guys see? It was infinite me, I guess, talking. Did you guys see that? Did you see the thing that I was just talking about with Adele? Could you understand what I was saying? You can understand it, okay. So a lot of notch filtering there. Oh, you couldn't understand? I'm going to go back to it here. Do the notch again. Okay, I'm going to go back to it. So, hang on. Here we go. Let's flip it over. Okay, so we're all good. You guys can see now. Right here, minus at 930 hertz, minus 18. That is a notch filter there. At 1.6K, minus 18, notch filter. At 3.1K, minus 12 dB. Those are incredibly harsh frequencies, and that is, you never see extreme EQ like that. That's as narrow band that's as narrow as you can get with that plugin, the Q10. But the plugin I was talking about, the Metric Halo channel strip, does a way narrower bandwidth than that. And you go to minus 24. That EQ only goes to minus 18. Those are huge cuts. That's Adele's vocal through all of the 21 album. Rolling in the Deep, Rumor Has It, all those stuff have those massive cuts in it. And the guy that mixed it, Tom Elmhurst, turned it up and realized that her voice was incredibly piercing. Because it's piercing anyways. Can you imagine if it didn't have that in it? There are things you can do, music make lightning, that you can do if you have a notch filter. There are some companies that make notch filters. You can notch filter with a GML EQ. You can notch filter. Universal Audio used to make a notch filter that they'd use for film back in the day that we used to use at studios that could notch out those kind of frequencies and everything. But it's much easier in software. You like Sonics. The suppressor. You need to put your real name in somehow. Put it in. I know who you are. Oh, it's Joe. Got it. You're Joe. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, so that's that's an important thing, is realizing that. I think that another thing in being able to recognize when you're using orchestral libraries is that either using EQ to kind of separate your sections from each other is very, very important. Because many times, I've said this before, if you record all the instruments in the same room, you're going to get the same kind of buildups in areas. You're going to get, even if you do separate passes, which you're going to be doing where you're playing the notes in separately, the violas, the violins, the cellos, you're not going to get the definition that you need. That's why I would go in and use different libraries to double. And I think it was, many other. I use many other libraries to do that. So that's something to keep in mind. But EQing is really important for that as well. Can you have a different name in here than Rick Channel and then YouTube? Just tell me what it is. All you have to do is provide Aaron with who you are at the beginning of the thing, and I can tell. What's the best way to compensate for the 4K notch? Don't auto-tune vocals. I call it it's not the 4K notch, it's the 4K whistle. The reason that you want to spot EQ things, though, is because your vocal sounds really unnatural. If you go through and take, because it's only on certain syllables, if you go through and actually duck that frequency on the entire vocal or whatever an instrument it might be, it will sound weird. It will. So I would spot EQ it. You can actually put a plug-in on and just go through and automate where it turns on and off. But I'd always like to write it into the track. Because sometimes I would do a record, I would mix it. Band might get signed to a major record label, and then they want to bring someone else in to mix. And I'd have to send the tracks. And I would always write those things in because I don't want a mixer having to spend time like Tom Elmhurst did in the Adele. That stuff should have been taken care of on tracking, you know. That's like, why is he doing that? That's what I ask. Because it was painful to listen to. Tom says putting the same reverb on all simple orchestral libraries help make the things feel like everything in the same room. Yeah. Some of the libraries, like the Vienna libraries that are recorded that are really, really dry, you have to add reverbs to, and you try and get the stuff to sound like they're in the same room. Ronald, you had an audiology test, you had a dip around 4K. Anybody that's over 40 years old, if you do music, you have the 4K notch. Now, does that mean that you compensate by adding 4K on everything? No. But what it does do, how many of you are over 40 and musicians? How many of you do music every day and are over 40? I know some of you are. Because you probably have the 4K notch. But typically, I don't find that people would overcompensate for it. I find that when you have a buildup of that, it tends to be painful. So it tends to be painful. It is. How many of you have pain when you hear really sharp, really piercing sounds? Harry, you have tinnitus? Frank, you've been hearing impaired since childhood. Okay. How many have tinnitus or tinnitus? You don't think you do? You do, Michael? Okay. Not yet, Tom. That's good. Yes. Okay. Pain. You have pain? No. Chip. Okay. Tinnitus. Okay. Only really no low noise environments. Okay. Frank. I want to see everybody on here answer this. How many have tinnitus or tinnitus? You're not sure? Harry, yours first appeared after a Satriani concert. Oh, brother. Not every person that has hearing loss has tinnitus. I have it. I've had it since 2012. I've talked about it. How many of you have heard heard me talk about it before? I have intermittent tinnitus, which is extremely unusual. Today, if I plug my ears, I have absolutely no sound at all, no ringing at all, none. 2 days ago, oh my God, ringing so loud that you would say, I shared my pain. I'm going to give you an example. The video I released a couple days ago where I was walking in from outside, I shot the intro outside. And here there are locusts or cicadas or whatever that are incredibly loud. My ringing was so loud I could not hear them. I couldn't hear them. It wasn't until, I don't know, one of my kids said, "What is that sound?" I said, "What? I don't hear any sound. What are you talking about?" My ringing was so loud I couldn't hear. These things were deafeningly loud. Deafeningly loud. And I couldn't hear over the ringing in my ears. And today, I plug my ears, dead silence. Dead silence. I don't know. Nothing. All day. Nothing. Yesterday, ringing like crazy. 100 dB of 10K. Today, dead silence. I don't know anyone that has intermittent ringing like this. Better rested you are. Yeah. If I took a nap right now for 5 minutes, it would come back deafeningly loud again. But I literally could not hear the cicadas that were so loud in the thing. It was an unusable shot because of that. And I might have gone with that, and people would have thought, well, what is wrong with Rick? How could he not hear this? It's an insect in your ear. White noise helps it doesn't keep me awake. Yes, Michael, if you hear a slight high-pitched noise, that's tinnitus. That just hasn't gotten bad enough yet, but it will if you don't take care of your ears. Harry, yours gotten worse from playing live in a rock band for years. I always wear earplugs. I got mine after taking antibiotics. I was taking a Z-Pack in 2012. I remember it. July 22nd. 2012. Went to bed, 3 in the morning after a session. I woke up, and it was the summertime, and I thought there was cicadas in my room. It's like, I walk out, my wife is with the kids eating breakfast. I said, what is that? She said, what are you talking about? I said, we have grasshoppers or something in the house? She said, what are you talking about? I said, that screeching sound. You don't hear that? She said, no. I said, come on, tell me none of you hear that. What are you talking about, Daddy? I don't hear that. Dylan, Lennon, Layla, nothing. Layla wasn't even born yet. Dylan, Lennon, didn't hear anything. What are you hearing? And I started going to ENTs. Oh my God, I went to about 20 doctors. You got your hearing loss from antibiotics too, Frank? Yeah. Yes, be careful with antibiotics. They're toxic. It's called ototoxicity. I went to all these specialists. I had an MRI of my head. They thought it could be an inflammation of the auditory nerve. I went to I got on prednisone. That didn't help. All it did was make me not sleep. And finally, after about 3 weeks, I got a good night's sleep, and I woke up and it was gone. And then it started becoming intermittent. And some days it's there, loud, 100 dB of 10K, and then other days, dead silence. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. My doctor has no idea, never seen anything like it. People don't get it intermittently. So I'm lucky. I thought I would never enjoy music again. But take care of your hearing. It's very important. Very important. It's terrible. It is terrible, Tom. The cicada thing, that was really... the fact that I couldn't tell... you had no idea of antibiotics. You had tiny ringing from such constant engaging. It got worse last year after you got over strep. Yeah. There are certain types of antibiotics. I'm not a doctor, but my Aunt Penny that you guys met, some of you guys met, she has a lot of hearing loss in one of her ears because she was on a like gentamicin or something. And she lost a lot of hearing in one ear, and she doesn't have ringing though. She has hearing loss. But I have a friend who was on antibiotics. She lost all of her hearing in her right ear and has tinnitus. Bad. You got yours when a snare drummer played and you were setting microphones. Take care. I know, Ro. I feel your pain. You got to watch out for that stuff. Yeah. Someday they're going to figure it out, though. They will. They'll come up with some type of fix. There's 50 million people in the United States alone that have it. 50 million. Whoever invents a cure for this is going to be the richest company in the world. Imagine having 50 million customers. I mean, that's an insane amount, right? University of Maryland's doing a lot of research on it for years. You know, I used to look every day to see, and I stopped looking years ago now. And when I realized mine was intermittent, I probably go 4 days a week with no ringing. And the other 3 days, it's never a little bit. It's either incredibly loud or gone. And I've just learned to deal with it now. I don't even, I just ignore it. I'm good at ignoring it. So I've had no choice. I mean, I get no choice, right? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? I enjoy music even if my ears are ringing. Doesn't matter. But when they're not ringing, I really enjoy music. Today, I'm loving music. One thing I'll say, though, I found that how long does it last? It lasts forever, for your whole life. Until they figure out something. But I found that if I match the exact sound, which is about, in me, it's about 9.4K. If I match the exact sound and I put up a sine wave up to my ear, it'll abate for a minute. Maybe 30 seconds or so. It'll go away. It's like your brain is getting a signal that sound is has been amplified, and it will turn off momentarily, but then it comes right back. So there's some type of I'm not sure why, honestly. I don't know why, but it's be careful with antibiotics. That's all I'm going to say. I don't want to preach about stuff like that, but you only have one set of ears. Be careful with headphones. Make sure that you just be careful. You get perceived distortion if you hit myself with the same frequency. The frequency, Frank, is consistent with me. It's like I said, about 9.6K. But the amplitude is unbelievable. If you guys could hear what I hear, you would think, I don't believe that Rick, how does Rick even work like that? That's what you would say. You would say, I can't even fathom that. How does he work? But I want you to know that I don't always hear that. So you figure more than half the days, 4 out of 6 days, I don't have it. Or 4 out of 7 days, 5 out of 7 days, I don't have it. Yours is that high, Harry? Yeah, mine is a lot lower than that. It was difficult to compensate when I first got it. I didn't know how to work around it. I couldn't hear cymbals. I think it was worse when I first got it because my brain wasn't able to quiet it at all. So I'm really, I'm very happy right now that I'm having a good day. Like I said, it doesn't bother my appreciation of music or anything. And even when it's really loud, I ignore it. Can it affect intonation when singing? No. Mine is, I would say it's an indiscriminate pitch. So, can it affect intonation? It would affect me hearing the cymbals on stuff. Joe, you have perpetual 13K ringing always, never goes away. Down at minus 20 dB. Lower frequency squeal is 8K. Intermittent, they have no clue what triggers it. Oh, man. It's brutal. Brutal. All right. I've got to go here. We're just getting going on this. I'm going to be putting out another lesson video here on the Beato Club today. So I'm working on that, and I'm working on a new video on phase. Because a lot of people have questioned on phase, and I'm talking about phase on multiple instruments. So, are there ear training apps that I recommend better for adults? My boys are too old for Null. It's going to be, I'll talk about that in the future, Harry. Alex, you want to ask a question on ear training? Go ahead. Got a question? Alex, I'm waiting. I'm waiting. Typing. Okay. phase video is going to be really cool. I'm not sure if I'm going to just call it phase or in phase. You want to improve hearing, more complicated chords and chord progressions. Any way to exercise you can build on your own. Well, we're still working on the Beato ear training method here. That's the only course I don't know any other courses really. Joe, my energy is inspiring. Well, I appreciate that. All right, I'm going to go to phase or not to phase. I'll come on and I'll ask that, Monty. That's a good one. I like it. All right, you guys are the best.